In 1984, the first-generation Renault Espace was a kind of scruffy punk that spat in the face of automotive conventions. On the other hand, its successor from 1991, the Espace II, had traded its originality for a three-piece suit and a very sensible square cut. Gone was the "I don't care about conventions" side. Renault took its time to impose this minivan concept, but it eventually caught on. As early as 1987, engineers were already working on what was next. And with the Espace II, Renault showed that it had faith in its baby, to the point of sticking a 5.6 under the hood, or even a Formula One engine. So today, let's look back at the story of a minivan that's definitely not like the others. The Espace one. It was a gamble, an industrial poker game played with half-crumpled cards. Originally designed by Matra, this minivan concept had become orphaned. Because public service announcement, which was originally supposed to market this strange contraption first, was in full financial disarray and therefore had to withdraw from the project. Renault picked it up, dusted it off, and against all odds, this ugly duckling turned into a swan. After nearly facing disaster because at first sales were not really meeting expectations, Renault's perseverance ended up paying off, and Renault found itself catapulted to the forefront of European innovation. Like a star chef who creates an unlikely but tasty dish. As early as 1986, a version for the Americans was conceived, the Espace Prime. And in 1987, Matra and Renault launched the P36 project, which gave birth to our Espace, two which are the subject of discussion today. Sales of the Espace One continued to climb slowly but surely with a peak in 1990 at 47,421 units. Nothing to brag about, but enough for marketing to notice that customers particularly liked the high-end versions. The conclusion was therefore clear: it was necessary to move upmarket, to go for luxury, and above all, to bring more money into the coffers. Between the prototypes for American Motors Corporation in 1986 and 1987 and the P36A, P36B, J48 projects in 1988, we've seen style trials parade by like candidates in a beauty contest. In the end, they opted for a gentle evolution, a bit chubby, but with a certain presence. Gone is the slightly makeshift look of space. The P36 became J63, imposing like a boss who walks into a meeting with a crocodile briefcase. The design was finalized in 1988, and no more parts picked up here and there. The J63 had a real personality. The platform was extended to 14 feet, 6 inches from 14 feet, and the front train abandoned the old stuff from the Fuego to take that of the Renault 25. And then, icing on the cake, they planned to graft the 5.6 PR5 onto it in order to appeal to a certain bourgeoisie. In parallel, at Renault and Matra, they were watching the Espace One climb quietly on the market. Sales remained modest, but they exceeded the capacities of the Matra factory in Romorantin. So the decision was made to open a second assembly line in Dieppe, at Alpine. For the J63, Renault had even bigger plans, and juggling between two sites was not the easiest. So they decided to build a brand new factory in Romorantin, the Romo Center. 318,792 square meters of concrete and ambition on 100,000 square meters of land, largely financed by Matra. An industrial palace for a minivan that kept its composite bodywork, which itself was manufactured just next door. In 1990, while the J63 was entering its phase of industrialization, Matra wanted to play the adventurers. They proposed to Renault two somewhat crazy versions, the P40, a rover with a body kit that today reminds a lot of what the scenic RX-4 will be, and the P46, a racing beast with a 5.6 PR8 sub. 5 stuffed with 2 Garrett turbos, Quadra all-wheel drive, 265 horsepower, and 240 kilometers per hour. A minivan that could overtake a Porsche while patting its belly. With its body kit discreet but muscular, it was the kind of car a secret agent would drive to pick up his kids from school. Alas, Renault said no, and these two prototypes today sleep in the Romorantin Museum like relics of a slightly crazy dream. The Series Do J63 Space was finally unveiled in March 1991 at the Geneva Motor Show. No one was surprised anymore. The minivan, it was no longer a revolution. It was just obvious. But everyone agreed that it was damn well finished. The tinkering of the old, this JX63, was longer, more imposing, and kept its master asset a flat floor and a modularity to make a Swiss knife pale. The interior made a leap forward with materials that smelled of the bourgeois rather than Formica. Under the hood, we had the choice of four-cylinder gasoline of 2.2 liters and 110 horses, a somewhat sluggish turbo diesel with 88 horses, or the PRV V6 of 2,849 cc, 3 and 153 horses. Some markets even had a 1,995 cubic centimeters of 103 horses. And the Quadra transmission was still there, reserved for the 2.2 liters. The public loved it, and the sales of 1,991 rode the wave of Space One without any French competition to put sticks in their wheels. If the first buyers were somewhat eccentric pioneers, those of Space Two formed a more heterogeneous mix, ranging from the senior executive to the father of a large family. With its statutory look at its 5.6, they came to tickle the Renault 25 and the Safran at the top of the range. But the party didn't last forever. Public Service Announcement finally reacted and drew its Peugeot 806 and Citroën Evasion in 1994, followed by Ford, Volkswagen, and Seat with their Galaxy, Karan, and Alhambra in 1995. The Espace 2 remained the leader, but growth was slowing down. To maintain the appeal, Renault released Special Series Non-Stop Olympic 1000 1992, Helios, Alizé, Cyclade, Space Mountain, Big Screen, Magellan, New World. In short, there was something for everyone. In terms of evolution, the diesel gained 4 horsepower in 1995, capping at 92 horsepower. Just that, but no restyling. With the Scenic, which made its debut in 1996, Renault had to reposition the Espace 3 higher to avoid stepping on its own toes. And then, of course, for the 10th anniversary of the Espace, Renault Matra and Renault Sport had a completely crazy idea. The Espace is over. A minivan with a 510 of Formula 1 800A minivan with a 510 of Formula, 820 horses, 300 kilometers per hour, and a 0 to 100 in 2.9 seconds. Presented in 1994 in Paris, it was a screaming beast with a body-built bodywork. 2 versions existed, a static one for the salons and a rolling one, driven by Alain Prost in 1995. But we will undoubtedly talk about it in another video because it deserves a video all to itself. So of course, don't hesitate to subscribe. Retired in 1996 after 317,225 units, the Espace 2 proved that there was a market for minivans, even more than the Espace. Aesthetically successful, well-finished, well-motorized, it dominated the 90s, forcing the competition to move. SUVs ended up making the concept of the minivan outdated in the 2010s. But in its time, it was the king of family roads. And do you have memories in space? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos.